Greetings and thank you for watching this video. I am Marco Bianchini. I'm an economist in the SME and Entrepreneurship division of the Center for Entrepreneurship, SMEs, Regions and Cities. I'm here with my co-author, In-Sung Kwon. You should see our little faces on the top right bottom of your screen. And I'm here to present you one of the chapters of the upcoming SME digitalization report, and in particular chapter 6, who is called that focuses on how can blockchain ecosystems serve SMEs. First of all, I would like to tell you something about the structure of both of the chapter and of my presentation, which we will touch at first on the features and challenges of blockchain, again, for SMEs, so in this specific angle. Then we will go to the discussion of the case on the two case studies that we conducted in Israel and Italy about their blockchain ecosystem. And then I will conclude by discussing some of the main policy approaches that we have seen emerging across the OECD. And I will conclude with a few next steps. So first of all, they say, let's start either with a joke or with a quote. I chose a quote for this one, and this is from Vitalik Buterin, which is one of the most famous faces in the blockchain world. I think this quote tells us something, because whereas most technologies tend to automate workers on the periphery doing menial tasks, blockchain automate away the center. This is just to pass the idea that what is very interesting about this technology is that this is really based on decentralization. So in the decentralization and the possibility to cut the middleman is something that is really structural in this technology, and that it gives to this technology some features that are really unique. In the paper, you will see that there is a semi-technical description of this, so we will discuss a bit more in detail what this entails from a technological perspective. Here in this presentation, we don't want to delve into it too much, but it's just to give you a first idea of how this, what is the philosophy behind this whole technology. Of course, as many of you know, the hype has been in especially 2017, 18, that this technology has been born with in the financial sector. So for financial application and monetary application, in particular with Bitcoin. So with the paper from 2009 for the anonymous Satoshi Nakamoto, that basically built upon decades of cryptographic research. So some elements that have been already widely studied, and in order to create this decentralized digital currency that actually again became quite at the center of the attention for quite a long period. What we want to do, though, I will not talk too much about this, because actually what we have done in our project and what we think is most relevant for SMEs is the possibilities of the industrial applications of this technology, both in the service and industrial sectors, actually. And we give here some examples of how we have seen this technology being applied for example, in healthcare, in supply chain management, in intellectual property protection, in cybersecurity. So there are many different areas in which this technology can be applied, and it has proven to be quite flexible as well. But why this? Because let's say, first of all, this technology is let's say, secure, decentralized database. So once you have secure data and any kind of data, of course, you can imagine how these can actually have a lot of different applications across the industries. We have seen that there are many innovative SMEs and startups that have been working, proposing a plethora of different what they are called dApps, so decentralized applications, so application based on this technology, in order to bring it to the wider public, again, to other SMEs, but also to fellow citizens. One other point is that there are also some companies that are, again, startups and SMEs, as well as governments in some places, that are focusing on building the infrastructure. So on managing the backend and maintenance of the infrastructure, so that to liberate basically SMEs and startups to work again on applications and possible new ways of thinking of how to manage data, how to share them, how to secure them. In this sense, to be very, very concise, we have seen that there are many projects that are targeting SMEs, so that they're built in order to make it possible for SMEs to use this technology, but there is not yet a killer application or something that is particularly widespread in the OECD markets. Then when we talk about features, I mean, why SMEs, one very normal question would be why SMEs should be interested in using this technology. And actually, something that we can say is that there are many different aspects and different peculiar features of this technology that are particularly interesting for SMEs. Because this, of course, we are talking about cutting the middleman, and this translates in cutting costs. And in particular, there is also literature that suggests that there are, especially in the reduced the costs of verification, for example, of the state of a transaction or data or digital assets, or in the lower cost of networking. This kind of costs usually impact even more the SMEs. So the possibility to cut on these costs, this creates a strong impact for this technology, as well as I touched upon briefly before, on cybersecurity, supply chain management, on smart contracts as well, which are a byproduct and something that is based on this technology, and in particular on the Ethereum network usually. That can also open up new possibilities. Again, in the paper, we discuss this quite at length, each one of these features. But of course, where there are features and opportunities, there are also barriers and challenges to be overcome. And in particular, here we focus on a few that we think are most relevant for SMEs. And I would point out, for example, the first one, let's say the overarching one, that is the access to digital infrastructure. So the access to digital infrastructure is the precondition for digitalization of SMEs in general, but of course also for the use of these kind of more advanced and upcoming technologies, which is always connected to the second barrier, that is the one related to skills and awareness. So the possibility for companies, also SMEs that are, let's say, traditional, so not high-tech startups, but also normal SMEs that don't have the capacity and don't even have the willingness by any means to develop their own blockchain systems or blockchain products, but at least to have the awareness that these kind of solutions are out there in the market, and the basic comprehension of how they work and how they can help them. Another barrier that is quite relevant is the one related to interoperability, because of course, being at an early stage, the development of the market is still based on many different infrastructures that usually do not communicate with each other. And that's a problem of which, of course, also policymakers are looking upon, because it can hinder the development of the ecosystem. And the last one is about legal uncertainties, on which this very decentralized network that covered the whole globe, it's not always easy to identify which is the legal jurisdiction that actually has a bigger say, or actually should deal with if problem arises. This is to give you a very general introduction to the topic, and now I pass the floor to my colleague In-Sung Kwon to discuss about the evidences that we have seen in the two country cases that we have dealt with in the past 2 years. Please, In-Sung.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Marco. My name is In-Sung, and I'll be presenting the two country case studies. Before discussing the findings, I would like to provide a brief recap on the methodologies of the two country case studies. The case studies were conducted with aim to analyze the characteristics and trends of the country-specific blockchain environments and the emerging opportunities that technology presents to innovative startups and SMEs. The country case study on Israel was carried out in cooperation with and at the request of the Small and Medium Business Agency and the Digital Israel National Bureau, and Italy's case with the Ministry of Economic Development. Through the research, we have identified 119 Israeli blockchain companies during the first half of 2019 and 67 Italian blockchain companies during the second half of 2019, and categorized companies based on the function of their main products. The number excludes trading platforms which provides exchanges between so-called cryptocurrencies and fiat, as we were focusing more on exploring the use cases. The result provide an interesting snapshot of the trend concerning blockchain applications and insight about the current and the future relevance to SMEs. As it can be observed from the chart, the types of blockchain-based solutions offered by startups are rather diversified. And we observed that the use cases reflect underlying structural differences as well as needs of domestic industries. For example, 30% of the companies in Israel, as you can see on the chart on the left, blockchain infrastructure or protocols with emphasis on cybersecurity, which is an industry Israel is particularly strong in. And on the other hand, in Italy, around a quarter of the companies are developing tailored enterprise solutions. And this was followed by supply chain tracing products. Interestingly, when combined, another quarter of the blockchain entrepreneurs are focusing on protecting Italian goods and intellectual property rights, aiming at tackling counterfeit goods. To present some of the key findings from the survey, a number of blockchain companies stated SMEs entrepreneurs as their primary targets, with most of their solutions at the late development or early commercialization stage. The pie in various shades of blue indicate SMEs entrepreneurs from self-employed to medium-sized businesses. When combined, it accounts for 36% and 57% of Israeli and Italian businesses, respectively. Interestingly, most of the Israeli companies are targeting overseas markets, while a majority of Italian enterprises are focusing on serving its domestic market. On financing of the blockchain companies, venture capital was widely used in Israel, whereas Italian companies relied on personal or debt financing. We reckon that the responses reflect the main financing resources available to startups in each country. For example, as Israel is well known for its active VC market, which facilitates innovative startups to tap into VCs. On the other hand, the volume of VC is small with respect to GDP in Italy, with smaller amounts available for funding rounds. This could partly be the reason why Italian entrepreneurs used personal finances. On the main actors of cooperation, companies mainly work with other traditional businesses with differences observed in each country. Around a quarter of businesses in the country stated that they work with other established businesses, which would be their potential customers. In addition, another quarter of Israeli blockchain companies mentioned mentors or consultants from investors as their main counterpart for cooperation, followed by decentralized application providers, which could partly be due to the large role of VCs in the country and the connections and networks that accompany VC investments. In comparison, in Italy, cooperation with traditional businesses was followed by higher educational institutions and non-academic research institutions. We also observed that a number of businesses were located close to universities, and by working hand in hand with universities, companies could have access to experts, talents, incubators, incubator office spaces, and as well as mentorship from the academia. The differences could also be observed from the barriers of businesses experienced by blockchain companies. Israeli companies mentioned obtaining financing as the biggest hurdle, and anecdotal evidences we gather suggest that this was mainly due to uncertain financial regulations regarding blockchain enterprises, where banks largely refrained from establishing business with them. Complying with regulations and administrative procedures was also a concern for Israeli blockchain businesses, especially with tax compliance issue as a top priority. This was because of unclear regulation on issuance and taxation of digital tokens. In case of Italian blockchain companies, complying with regulation and administrative procedures was mentioned as the biggest barrier, which is connected to the ambiguous legal framework regarding the technology. Respondents also pointed the challenges of complying with data-related regulations. Another main issue experienced by Italian companies was obtaining financing, which reflects Italy's tightened SME credit conditions and a contraction of lending to SMEs. Distributed ledger technology related policies commonly follow the path of initial focus on cryptocurrency to gradually expanding to blockchain innovations. This is a rather small and simplified diagram that aims to show the development of blockchain related policies observed in the case of Israel and Italy, which also applies to most of the countries that we have observed. Hype-driven cryptocurrency markets necessitated the policymakers to intervene, examining and deciding where the new type of asset stands in the existing legal framework through reports, resolutions, and circulars. And however, with potential applications beyond the financial sector, governments are increasingly taking initiative and efforts to explore the possibilities of blockchain and embrace in blockchain-induced innovations, which Marco will elaborate more on.
So thank you very much, Insung. I will take it from here. So when we are talking about policy approaches to this technology, of course, we know that we have started saying that this technology is based on decentralization, on networks of which each node of the network is managing and keeps the data and can share the data, and there is a consensus protocol managing all operations. So there is not a central point of decision or a central point of failure, which increases security. But even if there is not a central point in these networks, there are still policies that it doesn't mean that the governments cannot have a role in the development of the ecosystems for the application of this technology, especially again in industrial applications. And what we have seen here is that we identified 6 main areas of policymaking, of which, and for each one of these, we identified a few examples from OECD countries and beyond. The first one is about promoting policy coordination and long-term vision, because of course, this is an area in which there are many different policymakers that are involved. There are many different governmental agencies, ministries, central banks, security regulators. And so in this sense, we have seen that in some countries, as for example, Australia, France, Germany, there has been an effort to create national blockchain strategies or national blockchain strategies or roadmap in order to try to have a consistent strategic view and to coordinate all the efforts in the same direction for the development of this ecosystem. At the same time, we know that there are, so in some countries, there is the introduction of technical infrastructure to support the development of this. So we have seen, especially here we said the Europe and China and the People's Republic of China, but in Europe in particular, the European blockchain service infrastructure aims at providing the basic infrastructure for companies to build upon and create the decentralized application that should actually then become very useful in the market. A third area of policy is the one related to the increasing offer of training and awareness. And in these, we have seen that, for example, in Europe with the digital innovation hubs, or in Italy with the innovation managers and the vouchers for SMEs to use innovation managers, the focus has been on creating, like adding the opportunity of having tailored courses specifically on blockchain to institutions, centers, or actors that were already providing training, already providing awareness courses to SMEs in general on different topics. A fourth area that we identified is the one related to the adoption of the technology by public agencies to deliver public services to SMEs. And in this sense, we have seen there is a work ongoing in Korea, for example, on the public sector-led blockchain projects, which is a coordinated effort of many agencies and ministries in Korea. At the same time, other countries have taken different approaches, as for example in Colombia, there is they're exploring at the moment the possibility to use this technology for e-procurement, which of course it's extremely important for SMEs, or in Mexico, where they actually try to stimulate startups and innovative entrepreneurs and innovative SMEs to actually provide solution to the government that would be based, so themselves to propose to the government the public services that could be based on this technology with the blockchain Hack Mexico. The fifth area is about the supporting the private sector innovation in this area. And we have seen in North America, for example, in the US or in Canada, there are projects ongoing in the US about track and trace, the track and trace system for medicine that is led by the Food and Drug Administration, while in Canada, the focus has been on supply chain tracing in the steel industry. Or also initiatives like in the Netherlands, where a Dutch blockchain coalition has been established, which gathers all stakeholders, both from the public and private sector, in order to discuss about the needs and the strategic goals for the industry as a whole. The sixth and final, but very important aspect is that we have seen that there is quite a lot of activity on this topic, also not only at national level, but also at subnational level of government. And for example, we have seen two examples, one in Canada from British Columbia and Ontario on a project that is called Verifiable Organizations Network, or in the Lombardy region in the north of Italy about Nidi Gratis, which is in relation to ease the access to childcare and for mothers and for citizens in general in the region. So again, also the discussion between different level of governments, it's very important in the development of these policies. And finally, again, you will find more details on this in the chapter itself. And now let me just conclude by telling you about a few next steps on this line of work. And specifically, the first one would be that for this chapter, we would ask you to send your comments by the 15th of November. And to integrate them and to take them into account for the next draft of this chapter. And of course, if also you have interest in doing a research that is focused specifically on your country, as in the country case studies of Italy and Israel, of course, please feel free to contact us to discuss about how this could be done. And then about the next step, we know that in November, there will be a specific session on SMEs during the OECD Blockchain Policy Forum, so the big OECD-wide event, on which we will have one part specifically focusing on the use of this technology by SMEs. Then there will be, in 2021, the idea is to have the publication of the SME digitalization report, and so this chapter. And then afterwards, in Q2, the possibility of beginning with other country case studies, specifically on the use of this technology. So with this, I thank you very much. And again, you can find the contact on me and Insung at the bottom of this slide. And please, I would ask you to feel free to contact us and to keep up the discussion on this topic. So thank you again, and talk to you soon.
Thank you.